Hello, this is Julian Dale with my first non-jam deck album review. I've been meaning to try this for a while now, and it seemed wise to start with something relatively simple. More recently, Facebook showed me a 10-year-old memory that eventually inspired this project. During my childhood, my folks sometimes hung out with the Bolton family, who had a pair of twins named Nalani and Sarina. Skipping ahead to 2014, they were rising stars in the New Jersey music scene, so I checked out one of their songs and liked it so much that I drove a few towns over for a concert. Our reunification came afterwards, during which this picture was taken. Notice the Pantera shirt, which might have indicated that I was stepping out of my comfort zone a bit. But it was such a positive experience that I was invited to their place to spend the night. In the following months, I must have gone to about a dozen of those concerts, which can be explained by my desire to tour with them, as well as the crush I had on Sarina. Even after being friend-zoned, I kept trying to stay on her good side, like the time I bought her a mandolin as a birthday present. I thought I was investing in their music, but I don't think the instrument was ever used. Anyway, I slowly realized there was no place for me with these girls, with all the close friends and professional musicians keeping them occupied. Concerts became more and more sparse after 2014, even though I still kept an eye out for their new albums. At that first Nalani and Sarina concert I went to, I received Lessons Learned as a free gift due to our past together. This means that out of all the CDs I own, it is one of the best in relation to what it cost. In this short discography, Lessons Learned was the first major release, although 5 tracks were heard on an EP a year earlier. The genre is a blend of R&B, pop, and rock, and the twins each play guitar, keyboards, and ukulele, which is supposed to be a tribute to their Filipino roots. Otherwise, there are a few session musicians on guitar, bass, horns, and drums. I would give their names, but unfortunately, I currently don't have access to the liner notes, meaning I don't feel like sorting through all the other ones. When I discuss each song, you will hear me compare my original opinions to the way I look at the songs now. This is because I didn't truly evaluate them until I started this project. When listening to a lot of music, my brain is on autopilot, so my first impressions are oftentimes my only impressions. But Nalani and Sarina are so fascinating to me that they've joined the likes of Jandek in that I'm ready to formally share my thoughts for a YouTube video. The difference from Jandek is that this album has lost some of its appeal after several years of me discovering more complex and unusual music. With some exceptions, the song structures are formulaic and certain lyrics sound a bit amateur. However, the one aspect of this music that consistently holds up is the singing voice of these girls. It is unbelievably satisfying to hear a pair of twins harmonize so beautifully. Track 1 on the album is Raw Sugar, an upbeat little tune in C#. I remember loving it as an opener for their concerts, and it still gives me a warm feeling when I hear it. Lyrically, it introduces the themes of freedom and young love. The first lyrics are about wanting to see the world, while the chorus is simply about the narrator's lover and what she would do for him. For me, drawbacks include the boring second half of the chorus, which I think would have been better as a guitar solo. I guess I'm just not a fan of vocals without actual words. Meanwhile, I find the bridge to be rushed and out of place. Despite these things, the song's strengths at least put it in the middle tier of this album. But if you want to talk about my favorite Nalani and Sarina songs, you have to mention There I Go, which was my number 1 for a long time. This can partially be explained by that sexy keyboard intro. Lyrically, the song seems to be about social anxiety, until we reach the chorus, where we get a glimpse of the narrator's more confident side. In the bridge, I especially like the lyric, "We change, we grow, we fight till we know that to live we must be free." I guess that is a little vague, but it's clearly a defining moment of the album. With its slightly melancholy chord progression, I think overall it's a cut above the previous track. Up next is one of the more obscure songs, since I rarely heard it played live. This is Masha's song, named after a friend of the twins who I often saw at concerts. Essentially, we have a combination of a breakup song and a pep talk, something I can really appreciate right now. While I prefer some of the other ballads on the album, I like to imagine Nalani and Sarina writing the song for me, which makes it a surprisingly good coping mechanism. Then the album picks up the pace on Hung Up, a funky track most likely influenced by James Brown. As a bassist, there's a lot for me to like here. The lyrics are about the narrator's uncontrollable lust for a guy that her parents don't like. I think it's very fitting for a funk song. Plus, the song structure is a bit more interesting than that of the previous tracks. There are actually two distinct bridges, separated by a guitar solo that kinda reminds me of Stevie Ray Vaughan. It might be mediocre by his standards, but I think it suits the song just fine. For me, the only problem with Hung Up is the horns, which are quite obnoxious and out of place on this album. This is why I always preferred the live versions, where those instruments are absent. I might be biased with Scars, since it was the first song I heard on this album. Regardless, this is more of a love song than the last one, since it's about facing the narrator's painful past as a team. She can't do it with just anybody, which is why she says, "You are the one" in the second pre-chorus. Behind this is a beautiful chord progression with some interesting xylophone licks as the cherry on top. But I don't know how I feel about the second verse. They're playing around with the phrase, "a penny for your thoughts," to show how the narrator helps her partner with his problems and vice versa. I just find it funny to imagine them exchanging coins back and forth. Other than that, I think this is one of the better tracks. But it only gets better on the next one, because for a few reasons, Balloons is my favorite song on the album. This ballad in the key of B is basically about spending the night with someone you love and feeling like the universe is at your fingertips. To me, the balloon symbolism refers to the narrator letting go of her past while adopting a new point of view as if she's looking down at everyone on Earth. Then you have some quotable moments like the part about knowing how the wind will blow. Of course, that gentle piano melody is an excellent hook, and the instrumental part after the second chorus makes for a satisfying climax. Simply put, everything fits in this song, so I really hope people rediscover it someday. But don't you just love when the best song is followed by the worst? To be fair, there are no bad songs on this album, but in terms of forgettability, Bittersweet takes the cake. Most of the song consists of the same two chords, making the piano solo seem like the twins are just going through the motions. Not to mention, their idea of a bridge seems to be changing a chord in the second chorus. But my main issue with the song is the lyrics. It's a relationship song in which the narrator knows her lover is problematic, but is too attached to leave him. In my opinion, bittersweet isn't the right word for this, because the song only tells us about the bad stuff. Then you have the lyric, "You think you're Mr. Nice Guy, well I don't, no I don't." Or how about, "Abracadabra, won't you disappear?" I'm guessing they're trying to be sassy, but to me, it sounds like a kid's way of doing it. As you might expect, the only saving grace is their singing voices, especially in that catchy chorus. Unfortunately, I still tend to skip this song when I turn on the album. Over the years, I've been more fond of Cliché, although I don't like it the way I used to. Why is that? Well, this is one of two ukulele songs on the album, and since 2014, the instrument has largely fallen out of my favor. I don't mind it on Bob's Burgers, but everywhere else, it sounds too much like a toy. Plus, it seems like that one instrument people play when the others are too much work. Thankfully, that's not the case with Nalani and Sarina, although that still doesn't make it sound good. As for Cliché, it's more upbeat than the previous track, and the lyrics are more about the positive aspects of a relationship. Most lyrics are decent, especially those in the first verse, but the part about the birds and the bees is kind of a TMI moment. With its lovely chord progression, Cliché is one of those good songs with a major flaw that's hard to ignore. Not to be confused with the Beatles song of the same name, Should Have Known Better is the next ballad on the album. It's the other track that I would usually skip, but let's find out how good it really is. It's in the key of D, but I especially like the inclusion of the chords D over F sharp and D over C sharp. They offer some interesting possibilities for the bass line. Lyrically, you can tell it's one of the darker tracks since the opening lines are about suicide. The narrator just went through a breakup, and now it's becoming difficult to trust others and fall in love again. Pretty standard stuff, but there is a glaring problem with the chorus. It starts with the words, "Are you man enough to admit it?" Number one, it's not quite clear what he's supposed to be admitting. And of course, number two, the question of masculinity. Being honest with ourselves is a difficult part of growing up, regardless of gender, and struggling with it has nothing to do with how masculine or feminine you are. Not to mention, I don't think Nalani and Sarina would be too happy about a similar lyric with the genders reversed. Now, I could be overthinking this, but I think the song would benefit with a more gender-neutral lyric. Fortunately, this is followed by another highlight of the album. At the very least, it probably has the best chorus to sing along with. Start All Over is a song about, well, starting over with somebody. The narrator is ruminating about her past with this person, which is triggered in the first verse by a picture that falls from the shelf. In the next verse, a drop of rain symbolizes her ability to wash herself of her negative emotions. All of this culminates in the bridge, in which she claims that her eyes are wide open so that she can get on with her life. To top it all off, the song ends with one of the better piano solos on the album. I'll always remember the more tender version I heard at a street fair in Princeton, which was preceded by the Stephen Foster song, Hard Times Come Again No More. Truly that was my peak as a Nalani and Sarina fan.
I don't remember if I ever felt this way, so I'm starting over again. I don't remember if I ever got the chance, so give me your hand.
Next we have In the Eye, which is easily my favorite dark song on the album. In the key of E, the twins sing about what might be the same breakup as Should Have Known Better, although these lyrics are more retrospective. The narrator has become quite hard on herself, believing she ultimately didn't offer enough during the relationship. Nowadays, she stays in a negative mindset now that the guy has found a new lover. Some iconic lyrics include a variation on the adage about people living in glass houses, plus a chilling ending in which the guy severs all ties with the narrator. That guitar melody and overall progression of the song are both quite effective, so I honestly have no complaints about this one, unless you want me to nitpick to the extreme. The next song is Please Don't Stop the Rain, which has a That's What She Said joke in the first pre-chorus. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about the track itself. This is the other ukulele song, and probably the better one. I think it has the album's catchiest chord progression, which you can hear right away in the intro. I love how most of the song revolves around that, while the lyrics seem to be a continuation of the last song. The narrator had a broken heart, but now it's been miraculously fixed by whoever the song is about. Basically, the infatuation is so strong that the two are perfectly fine with just making out in the rain. For me, flaws include some of the keyboards, which sound kind of like a 90s computer game, while the outro seems like it was specifically written for crowd participation, which is usually what happened at concerts. All in all, I still like this one, despite the ukulele, but I probably would have preferred to have it as the closing track. Instead, they went with White Dove, maybe because they didn't want to have two ballads in a row. Ever since I wrote a guitar solo for this song, It has had a special place in my heart, and today it's still worth a listen. Just like Balloons, it revolves around a graceful piano riff, which I remember my ex thinking it sounded a little girly for her. None of the other instruments really stand out, though, hence my guitar solo. Since the dove symbolism has always been about peace, freedom, and love, it definitely suits the album. Most likely, the narrator is reflecting on her recovery from those darker moments from earlier, while simultaneously realizing there will be more where that came from. The sloppier lyrics are counteracted by some very quotable ones, so this track is an imperfect but strong closer for the album. Now that I've painstakingly summarized every track, the question remains, is Lessons Learned worth your time? While a physical copy is hard to come by these days, you can still hear it on YouTube, which pretty much means you have nothing to lose. For a rather obscure artist, Nalani and Sarina certainly dished out a few gems, and I always swore they would become hits someday. That's why I gave the twins so much attention. I wanted to witness their rise to glory and brag that I was there from the beginning. Unfortunately, they haven't been active for a while now, nor have they kept their website up and running. Even Jandek has more of a presence, so in a weird way, this gives it some extra appeal. Whatever happens to the twins, Lessons Learned remains one of my most prized albums, despite many others topping it in terms of technicality and originality. 10 years later, the nostalgic value is high, and I'm certain another decade won't change a thing. Nalani and Sarina, if you're watching this, I salute you wherever you may be.